So, GTM, this is the inaugural episode of our podcast. So, we're going to find out what is GTM. What is the club? Why? How did it start? Why is it called Grand Touring Motorsports? Things like that. Eric, why?
Oh man. All right. So GTM, right? So that's our acronym for Grand Touring Motorsports. We started a lot further back than most people. Oh, hang on a second. Sorry, Zoom is doing something weird. So we started a lot further back than people realize. Officially as a club, we kind of kicked it off in 2014. That was our almost our second year, but realistically it goes back to my early days as a web developer, and I had bought the domain grandtouring.org, and I wanted to stand up an Audi website devoted to the GT coupes, which GT stands for Grand Touring in most European brands. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to stand up this Audi website, and it's going to be all about GT coupes and all that kind of thing. And so Grand Touring Audi was started in 2000, and it was an online community for owners and enthusiasts worldwide. And it's kind of funny, most of the people that were in that organization were from the UK, because there's a super high concentration of those cars over there, despite them having sold, like, I don't know, 30 or 40,000 of them here in the United States. And so I did that for about 5 years, but at the same time, I was actually the webmaster for multiple regions of PCA, including PCA National and a bunch of the Audi Club's websites. Most of the time I did most of my work here in the DC and Maryland, Virginia area. So, did that for a while and then shut it down. And then we kind of skipped forward to 2005, and my dad wanted to start his own business, kind of getting out of a long career of doing IT work and, coding on mainframes and stuff like that. And so he was getting realizing his passion, right? But he wanted to turn it into a business. And his passion had always been around cars. And so we were a car family. It was just one of those things. And so his idea was, hey, I'm going to start a business, reselling parts for European cars, mostly VW, Porsche, Audi, that kind of stuff. And he was like, well, I need a good name and this and that. And I was like, well, I just retired the GTA, Grand Touring Audi name. Why don't you just call it Grand Touring Motorsports? That way it's all encompassing. And then we took a lot of the material from there and moved it over to the new business. And so, he got that all started back in 2005. So that's go ahead.
I was going to say, I actually think I bought some parts from your father using Grand Touring when I had my A8. I needed some brakes or whatever, and I reached out to him, and he hooked me up with a decent deal. So, thanks a lot for that.
Your mechanic is fantastic.
Yes, all of them.
But yeah, so I mean, we have an interesting history with VAG products, for the Volkswagen Audi group, for those of you that don't know what the acronym means. I mean, it goes back, we've had a VW in the family since the early 60s, right? Going back to my grandparents and whatnot. And so between VWs, between Audis, between Porsches and whatnot, it's just one of those things, you just get used to it. And in my head, it's weird. It's a weird indoctrination that it was like, I'm not going to own anything that isn't a VAG product. And I've been very good about that. I've only owned one American car in my lifetime. I've never owned a Japanese car. And hey, even my tow vehicle is German underneath, so it's all good. But yeah, I haven't strayed too far away. I had one BMW, and it was, we'll talk about that in another episode. But
that's a whole series in itself.
Yeah, it's all about boat ownership. But but that being said, my dad kicked off the business in 06, and he really catered towards the people he knew in the track community and the autocross world. He was a pro solo autocrosser, so he really gravitated to those guys. And his idea was to kind of help them get the parts they needed so that their cars would be reliable on any given track or autocross weekend. And so, that was all taken care of back in 05, 06. And, Dad ran the business for about 5 years or so. Unfortunately, he left us in 2010, passed away from brain cancer. So that was a sad day. And, my sister and I, like I said, we came from a racing family. We were tied up in all of that. It was one of those things, kind of grew up in PCA, grew up in the Audi Club, all these kind of things, and saw this evolution, right? And some of my closest friends as a kid, they yeah, their dad used to autocross with my dad, or we went to the track together, or, all that kind of stuff. And so after dad left us, it was tough. It's like, yeah, what do I do? I had only been married for a couple of years. It's like, I don't have hobbies outside of cars and computers. You can imagine, right? So my wife finally, kind of after about a year, she kicked me in the butt and she goes, yeah, you need to go find something to do. And I'm like, are you sure about that? Are you really sure? Because I had
Did
retired.
she really know what she was going to do? Did she
Yeah,
know
right.
the monster she was unleashing?
Exactly. I had retired from kart racing. I was going all over the place to do that. We had a small league of guys that we would go all over, and all over the country. And the final race I ever did, I was out in Riverside at Adams Motorsport Park. It was great. That's actually a car track as well, which kind of, I think it planted the seed in the back of my head of maybe I should go into road racing like my dad did. And obviously there's other members in our organization that are big club racers and whatnot, and they've influenced me throughout my life. And so after about a year or so, Jess kind of kicked me in the butt and said, you need to get out of the house and go do something. So I made the ultimate decision that, I did autocross, as well as I do. We went autocrossing together in high school.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'm done with all that mess. There's no more parking lots left. They've put islands everywhere. They're a disaster. It's roads, the asphalt's horrendous. So it's time to go road racing, right? And what did I know about that? Absolutely nothing. So in my infinite wisdom, I thought, hey, here's a good idea. I'm not going to buy a track car. I'm going to take a diesel Jetta and turn it into a track car because diesel cup cars are awesome. Oh God, what a
with factory backing, they are.
they're amazing, and flappy paddle gearboxes, and
Mm-hmm.
all the right parts. Granted, I drank the diesel Kool-Aid early on. Never believed that they were ever eco-friendly by any stretch of the imagination. But we've had a diesel in the family since the 90s, right? So for me, it was like, yeah, I'm gonna have a diesel. Granted, my Jetta was pretty quick. 320 verified foot-pounds at the front wheels. That's a hell of a motor. It's a hell of a diesel for a 1.9, right?
And a
So
little sidebar, it's still pretty quick.
yeah, but yes, absolutely. So that was a mistake, as I mentioned earlier. I made it about half a season and I blew it up at VIR coming down the front straight at about 140 miles an hour near red line. And yeah, I thought the fuel pump died actually. And so did my instructor. But it was cool until it wasn't. At which point, Matthew, who we'll probably have on the show at some other point, he got me in contact with somebody down near VIR, for those of you tuning in, is Virginia International Raceway, way down at the bottom of Central Virginia. Now famous, I guess, IMSA track, right? And so he calls me up and he goes, so I got a deal for you. I'm like, what the heck does that mean? He goes, it's not what you want, but it's cheap. And I'm like, what do you mean it's not what I want, but it's cheap? And he's like, well, have you thought about a TT? And I'm like, oh, God. My dad used to make fun of these cars relentlessly. He had all sorts of names for them, right? And we'll keep it PG, but this is why my car is nicknamed the Terrible Toad, right? Because that's the cleanest one of the bunch of them that we could pull out of the mix. So, needless to say, it had a blown motor. It was a single owner car. It was kept in the back of a shop for many, many years. But they offered it to me on the lean. And I was like, man, I really can't pass it up because the parts are interchangeable with the Jetta. Outside of the motor, I'll just move all the suspension, everything I bought, I'll put it over there and we'll go to town. Bought a junkyard motor and said, it's time to go racing for real this time. Figured we're doing it right the second time, right? Oh, Lord. And then what happened? What happened between you and me?
Well, we went to high school together. We met each other, I guess, back in '96 or whatever it was. Had a few classes. I really wasn't into cars so much then. Unlike you, I didn't come from a car family, which is amazing that I'm into cars at all right now. I don't know how that happened, but here I am.
I'm evil, that's why.
But no, in high school, I had a '91 Civic, and the most fun I ever had with that was allegedly hitting 125 miles an hour on Route 50, allegedly. And
Which Trans Am was pushing you down the road to get to this?
I think it was a hurricane. I had a tailwind pushing me. But no, and then I think in 2001 I bought my Volkswagen, and I can't remember how exactly, but I reached out to you about something, and we started hanging out more, and then we got into the autocrossing, or you were already in it, so I came over with my land pirates in
Oh
tow.
my
I don't
God.
know. I don't know if you remember that moniker, but yeah, my buddies and I had the land pirates. It's like my version of GTM 1.0, and I brought them over, and we were excellent, mediocre autocrossers.
Hey, did we absorb 2/3 of Land Pirates into GTM?
There were four of us, so we've got
Oh, we got 50%.
50%. But between the four of us, I was definitely the fastest with my little old 1.8T GTI. It wasn't even an AWP. It was the lower, what was it, AWD, AWW, whatever they call it, the 150 horsepower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
And
you got
then
it chipped because you were smart. You chipped it.
Yep. I chipped it. And then when I had to take it back to the dealership because the window regulators kept breaking, I had to keep swapping the chips. So I got good at taking the computer out. And then, we autocrossed for a couple years. And then I got into drag racing and then kind of left the autocross scene for a while. And then fast forward to, I guess, 2009, I ran into you at the 10-year reunion that, telling our age a little bit. And then we started talking, I think, and over the next couple years, we thought again. But then I was going on a work trip in, where was it, Nebraska?
Yeah, okay, of all places,
Yeah,
Omaha, Nebraska.
and
And
I
I think
reached out, and
was it me who posted something on Facebook and I was like, I'm in Omaha. What the heck is there to do here other than eat steak? And
no, I posted that I was going to Omaha for work, and is there anything to do? And you said, well, I'll be there, for work as well. And so we met, had dinner, started talking, and then
we
now
did eat steak. It was good.
it was okay. Omaha, Nebraska, the Omaha steaks, overrated, but that's a different topic. But yeah, so I came back. I started looking for track cars. And we started an email group, the Grand Touring Motorsports email Google group. Was me, you, and another guy, and a couple other people. Basically, it started out as, what car should I buy?
Which is a topic that has never left us.
Because we all get bored really easily, and we're all looking for something else to buy.
This is very true.
And so, what car should I buy lasted for about 2 years until I finally bought a car in 2013, and then a bunch of us got together and did my first track day, which was PCA at Shenny in May 2013, I think it was. And then I didn't do another track day after that until the next year, just because various different things. But in the meantime, the email group started growing. I think we decided to expand it to a Hangouts group and various other things that just turned into an actual club. I think you and I were having some discussions. We were like, you know what? Let's just start a club.
Mm-hmm. That's very true.
Yep.
It was super chaotic back in those days. We could not make up our minds like what things were going to be. I mean, God, we've changed logos like 3 times now. I mean, I think we've really settled in over the last, we're coming up on year 6, right? But I think the idea was, in the early days when you and I talked about it, I was really lamenting, like I was still healing, I was still grieving, all that kind of stuff. And I was really lamenting the old days, like the way the clubs used to be, because like I mentioned, I grew up in these clubs, and I did because I got introduced to this stuff at 5, 6, 7 years old, different organizations or whatever. And not to name names, but some of these larger organizations were a lot more family oriented back then than they are now. And so that was something for me. I was trying to fill a void, right? It's like, I want that sense of family again. I want that we get together in the paddock and it's a big party and the kids are out running around on the bikes. And I can't tell you the number of times I've been to Summit Point, as a kid, and I'd get on a bike and I'd be watching the race with my buddies or whatever. I'd see my dad at the end of the day. I'd wait to see, I didn't even have a schedule, but I just knew that when I heard the car, I was like, he's out. I got to go watch. Other than that, I got to do whatever I wanted, right? But it was all part of it, and all the meetings that they had. I used to, go to some of the board meetings and the monthly meetings and the parties that they would have and different people's houses. It was like this whole thing. And granted, that was the 80s, the 90s, whatever. Again, dating ourselves here, right? And even in the early 2000s. But a lot of it has changed. A lot of those organizations, we separate ourselves. Like we talk about it all the time. There's the club, and then there's these driving organizations. And that's, they've become these coin operated machines. And that was not our gig, right? You and I talked about that a lot. And so, when we formed GTM, the idea was like-minded people, a bunch of track rats, whatever, get together. Hey, let's go together so we're not alone, right? That used to be the big mantra, like the first 2 years. Never go to the track alone because GTM's got you covered, right? Then it became, it's not the cars, it's the people. Then it became, without members like you, we can't do this. There's been a lot of sayings over the years, but we kicked off our first summer bash, which technically we did with Hooked on Driving, whether they recognized it or not, but they kind of let us take control a little bit, have some fun. And then, we started creating those traditional events. Summer Bash is a big one. The Animal House is another one. Cannonball Run, all these different kind of things. I mean, Summer Bash 2 so far, outside of this year, is the only one that wasn't done at a track event. And this 2020 might actually be the second one, just because with everything the way it's going. But so I mean, we really got, like you said, we got kicked off in 13. In 14, we kind of put pen to paper. We built the website. The first one was terrible. The Hangouts, the Facebooks, the interwebs, all that stuff that we had going on. I mean, we definitely had technology on our side, and having past experience working for PCA National and Audi Club and all that, it was like, I know how to run a car club's website. Maybe I don't know how to run a car club, but you and I did make a big distinction, which is we're not a car club. We're a motorsports enthusiast organization, right? And we appreciate all disciplines. And that is super important to the whole idea behind GTM, is that it's not just about, going to the track and burning gas off of our chest. We come from different disciplines. We got guys that are off-roaders, right? We got guys that come from drag racing. We got guys that are autocrossers. We got, rally guys. I mean, they're all over the map. I mean, guys that are just into motorcycles. Everything, if it's got a motor and at least, I guess, one wheel or more and some way to steer it, we're interested in it. And so that makes it more inclusive. It also makes it more interesting and challenging in a way. I mean, because we're trying to do different things. But I'll turn to you to kind of complete that thought.
Well, I was going to say, when you mentioned the one wheel thing, I can't think of anybody that's into unicycle racing. So I don't think we've got any of those. But
we could power with it. We could power with a Ryobi, though. I think there's a way to do it.
I mean, but talking about all the different motorsports that we're into, and as a group, so we're just motorsports enthusiasts, all types of different disciplines. Even your uncle, your cousin, it does RC car racing.
That is correct.
I mean, so yeah, anything is, if it's got a motor, or even if it doesn't have a motor, we've got bicyclists in the group and everything like that. People that used to BMX race and stuff. I mean, it's just any type of like racing or motorsports or anything is we're into, and we welcome everyone.
Yeah, and motorsports is a broad term, and a lot of people, you go through an evolution too. Like, kind of like your story is more like this. It's like, early days with some drag racing and autocross, and then into the track, and then other things. And then now, like guys like Matt, right, who again, same kind of story, into cars from a very early age. As soon as they could do some autocross, club racing, whatever. And now he's into, what you would consider the road rally discipline, which a lot of people, it's just touring, driving dines, but it's not. It's actually a sanctioned form of motorsport. Those kind of time distance or, type of rally type things where they're going to different places and specific routes they have to take. There's a safety aspect to it, all that kind of stuff. So as you evolve, if you don't abandon motorsport, I guess, and that's our idea, is to continue to spread that motorsport enthusiasm. If you don't abandon it, there's something you can continually kind of evolve or grow into as time progresses, right?
Right.
So
yeah, so the club started 2000. 14, 15, fast forward to 6 years, it's now 2020. We've got what, 60, 65
70
members,
or
70
70.
members now. And that's net. That's with losing a couple over the years and picking up a couple. I mean, we're up to the 70 members. I think we started at what, like 5 when we first started it.
Yeah. And we've retained most of the OG, which is actually, original gangsters there. But
Right.
we've retained some of those those member numbers for a very long time. They're repeat offenders, I suppose. But they're a good core group of people. I mean, we do travel in a herd, and like you said, we're up to 70. Our membership numbers are well into the triple digits, but because we do lose people and then they come back, and reasons and seasons and all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah, and of those 70, we've got what, maybe going to events and like fully really active membership, probably 35 or so. And that's like actual physically active in the club, coming to events and things like that. On top of that, there's 15 to 20 that are super active online. They may not come to the events, but they're into all the online discussions in our Slack chat groups and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think technology has really because we've been able to embrace technology. We do have a lot of people that are in IT in our group. We've been able to continually move the ball forward, and like COVID didn't really affect us the same way it did a lot of other organizations. Now, granted, we operate as a non-for-profit and all that. We won't get into all that kind of stuff, but the idea is that we're still connected because we set ourselves up years ago on the premise of like just from that Google group where the idea was to stay connected, and we've always stayed connected, which has been really cool.
It helps that COVID came during the winter when there were no track events going on too.
It has ruined my planning though, and it continues to ruin my planning.
It's true.
And that's another thing too, right? Is we try to plan where we're going as a group, whether it be to a pro race or to an autocross or whatever it might be. And I mean, between you and me, it's a lot of work at the end of the day, right? Because not only are we planning this stuff, and we have, just for those listening at home, right, we got region chiefs. We're broken into 4 different zones now. I mean, we've got guys that have moved away and stayed in touch as far out as Hawaii and all that kind of stuff. But there's the planning part, there's the running it part. We got our region chiefs and all that to help us out and all the staff. But there's also the aftermath, right? We have a complete writing team that's always trying to keep up with things that are going on. I mean, we don't want to be the next car and driver. I mean, granted, we had aspirations of being, swallowed by Jalopnik, let's say that, right? But we bring our own flair to it because we're creating the adventure, right? And like you and I have said before, we have a bunch of mantras, but one of them is, it's not the destination, it's the journey. So we're kind of recording that journey. I mean, we have a vault full of pictures that's probably in the 5 digits, if not more at this point, going back years and years and years, and all the stories. And we get together, and it's I don't know, like sometimes you get together with somebody, you sit in the bar, and you know how it is. You just talk about the same thing. Oh, you remember what we did 20 years ago, blah, blah. And we're always like, as the Italians say, right? Sempre avanti, always forward. We're like, where are we going next, right? When can we launch the shuttle? And we've joked before that we're still going to be racing at an old age, even if it's, pulling walkers out of the trunk of our Cadillacs, like some of our members.
Furman.
Gordon. But you know what I'm saying though, right? It's we're never just sitting there kind of just dwelling on the past, and then you walk away from the conversation like, it's just more of the same. It's always this, what's the next adventure? Where are we going this time? Other than some traditional events, we don't try to repeat ourselves very much either, which makes it super interesting. And then, we kind of go with the ebb and flow of what people are getting into that year. Off-roading's been really picking up over the last 2 years. And so I even have a kind of weird, morbid interest in it myself because I've been watching.
It's a lot of fun.
Well, I've been stuck home watching a ton of History Channel, and I'm like, that looks really cool. I can do it too. No.
Well, you've been watching the the assault on Normandy, and they're dropping the Willys Jeeps off on the beach, and
Yeah, right. Oh, God, I mean,
it's like, oh, I got to do that now.
yeah. Those guys, I forget whatever the latest one was, where I was watching them traverse, Alaska from bottom to top. I'm like,
Yeah.
I want to do that. I'm gonna go buy a Toyota tomorrow. I gotta be realistic, but it's that sense of imagination. It's that passion, right? And we're trying to help spread that to other people. And one of the big ones for me is the kids, right? And so we're starting to see that a lot now too, where we've got guys in the group that their kids are now of that age where they want to get behind the wheel and they want to start driving. And granted, we have some low dollar cars, which are good. Here, go break that, we can fix it later, not a problem.
Break
um,
fix.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's the idea, is to continue that, because one of my philosophies as a parent is making sure that your kids are invested in the stuff that you do, because that's how you perpetuate those traditions and those specialties, or whatever you want to call them, versus, I want to jam them in every athletic sport in the world because I want to get them to whatever school, right? Yeah, I mean, granted, that's forward thinking, but I don't know. I want to share something of myself, something of my legacy with my kids, and this is what I know. And in the same respect, kind of going back to the beginning of the conversation, it's what my dad did for me, right? And I don't want to leave my mom out of this, because she used to autocross too back in the day when there was a ladies class. We have evolved. Motorsport has evolved. It has progressed. But yeah, it's just been all encompassing. And I whether my girls take it with them, because Jess isn't a motorhead, but she does know what she bought into. I hope that the girls look back and go, hey, I remember when we used to do those things with GTM. That was really cool. My dad used to take us here. We go hang out with the other kids. One of my best friends was, like us. It's like, hey, maybe they carry the torch and keep it going, and they're all electric hoverboards from Back to the Future. I don't, whatever the future holds for motorsport, I don't know. But
Well,
yeah,
right now it's virtual racing.
I might still be okay at that. I'm too old for Formula One at this point. But
I think we all are.
but yeah, and I think too, it's kind of cool is, there's been a few members that have said, I would have never continued on if I didn't have this type of support group, right? And I think that was really important to the whole thing, because going back to what we said earlier, the driving organizations just don't provide that, right? They provide a service. They provide a very good, professional, high quality service, but it doesn't have a lasting appeal, because as you've said at other conversations, there's an expiration date on a lot of sports, and it's not just motorsport, right? I played hockey for X amount of years and then I got hurt and I stopped, or something else got in the way. But if you can kind of keep people engaged, and again, this is why we're broad spectrum rather than just hyper focused on spec Miatas. That's all we do. It keeps people involved, and we do have members that admitted they're like, yeah, I haven't been to the track, and I used to track. uh, but they're still engaged. They're still there. And to your point about virtual racing, right? That's something that, and I'll let you talk about that in a second. That's something we've also used as a recruitment tool.
Yeah, and I think that's something we can go into more in depth with in another episode. But I don't know why my camera keeps shutting off for some stupid reason.
It's okay.
But yeah, I think the virtual racing thing is something that we can take into another episode, or at least our version of it. But I mean, just dealing with COVID. I mean, I'm glad that the major racing organizations have found an outlet in a way to create a spectacle of entertainment for us enthusiasts to continue, I guess, enjoying the sports. I mean, you don't see anybody playing MLB 2019, the show, or NBA Live. I mean, they had a couple. They had a couple. I'll give them that. Like a couple soccer teams did it. A couple NBA teams did it, or players and stuff got together and did it. But for the most part, motorsports has had a regular thing going on and on and on.
It's very true.
Virtual racing for the last 2 or 3 months, and it's been fairly successful.
Mm-hmm. I mean, even our virtual happy hours. I'm not saying we were at the tip of the spear on that, but we definitely kind of started doing them before they became a thing on Instagram and Facebook. Like, oh my God, we could do this stuff with Zoom or
Right.
whatever. We just kind of went, hey, there's an IndyCar race on Saturday. Do you want to watch it together? And like everything around here, that's kind of how it starts. Somebody has an idea, and then we just run with it until
Right.
kill it or make it really good. But yeah, no, to your point, I mean VRL, which is, so for those of you out there, VRL is our virtual racing league. We just completed our 12th one. Now, granted, we're not as fancy as everybody who's got $20,000 iRacing rigs, because we want to cater to a common denominator, right? So we've chosen, to run it on the Xbox and whatnot. And we've branched out a couple times, trying different platforms. But Forza is a sweet spot. And it's not about the realism, right? And like you said, we'll talk about this in depth at another point. But again, it's that sense of everybody coming together. And where else? I mean, granted, organized sports, but where else in a climate like today can you count on 10, 15 guys every week committed to coming and racing and getting together? And I mean, it's not always about the points. It is for me, but but
Glincident.
well, yeah, we'll talk about that at another point. But I mean, that is so for talking about GTM history, and this is the reason I want to bring this up. It is our only competitive event because we do not host our own competitive events.
But it's our only motorsports competitive event.
That
Because
is true.
we do have fantasy football and
That's true.
axe throwing and hill climbing at the mountain and whatever.
That's very true. That's very true. But yeah, it's our there. So it was part of how we built this thing was to stay out of trying to run our own track event or autocross, and one of the things we've done, and I often get made fun of, I guess, I don't know, I made fun of is maybe a little bit strong, is we get poked for is that we have the coaches union, we have all this kind of thing where support staff, you can always call us, and that is actually one of the things we pride ourselves on, is being able to call up our guys and say, hey, so-and-so needs like 10 instructors, or they need people to come staff and run grid or do this or host this party or whatever it is. And we get it done. We just knock it out, right? Because we're not, tied up in the whole red tape of actually running an event. It allows us to do the creative things, the marketing side, the promotion of an event, all that kind of stuff. And we worked with different groups, be it HOD, the Corvette Club, whatever it is. And we're continuing to grow that out. And for me, I think that's more fun. But we're invested in all that kind of stuff. Do you want to talk about like some of the other initiatives that we haven't fully developed, like maybe like the Drivers University or anything like that?
I think that is a topic we can go into again in another episode. Just being an intro, we can touch on it a little bit. But yeah, we're involved in the community. We had a charity golfing event. I'm constantly pushing our philanthropic endeavors, trying to get us to do more things like that. We just, you and I together just donated, to the club. We gave face masks to everybody in light of the whole COVID thing, since all the restrictions of everybody's got to wear face masks and things like that. And then, like you were saying, the Drivers University. Well, we also had a high school car care clinic.
That's right.
We used our high school as a guinea pig. I'd say it was successful. We didn't have the turnout we had hoped for, but the material was there. The volunteers were there, and I think it was a well thought out, well organized, and I guess, put on event that I think we've got talks of maybe doing it again with some other schools. So thinking about the community, we're not just hobbyists. We're enthusiasts, but we also want to give back, which helps. And in doing that, it helps grow the motorsport community, and it helps bring on a new generation of enthusiasts, which helps the motorsports world, I guess, survive and grow and continue on long after we're gone.
I think it also breaks down some of the barriers and some of the misconceptions as well, because
Right.
How many times have you heard, oh my God, racing is so expensive? I'm like, well, it's as expensive as you want it to be, right?
I mean, you could go out and buy a $50,000 formula car specific for a particular series, or you can go out and buy a $5,000 spec Miata. And if you're racing against identical cars, I mean, that's your barrier to entry. And I mean, there's a broad spectrum.
Yeah, and I think it's even more than that in some respects. I mean, you and I are big on education, right? And so I have a background, let's say school wise. Like I've always been a big student of history, right? So for me, that analyzing data, bringing things in, research, all that, and then trying to find a way to kind of water it down and bring it back to people in a way that's palatable. Because I think history oftentimes is it's just a bunch of names and dates and places and whatever. And so cars and motorsport are often, I feel, viewed the same way. It's a bunch of numbers and weights and oils and bolts and this and that, and it's really not. I mean, outside of all of this, cars are masterful pieces of beautiful engineering. Now, granted, there's some serious lemons out there, like the '88 Ford Tempo, and we'll get into all that at some day, at some point. There's some atrocities out there, but realistically, when you look at sports cars and even the hot hatchbacks and all that, there's some beautiful pieces of art that are rolling around in there that are underappreciated by a lot of people. So we try to also bring that passion, but for me, it's a lot about education. We talk a lot about safety. I mean, I know you and I and a lot of other guys in our quote unquote, coaches union are very, very plugged into the whole motorsport safety kind of thing, the way things should be done, the way things should be taught. We're a lot more progressive because we're younger than a lot of other people that are out there. And so we have new ways of approaching, how people should be taught and how to interact and keep people engaged in the sports in general. But all of that being said, if you look at motorsport as a whole, there are some detractors there. Oh my God, is it safe? The cars and this and that. And do I need a race car? And we'll probably talk about this in a later episode. The answer is no, you'll be fine. All that kind of stuff. You could do this in a rental car. Ask me how I know. But no, you don't need to, if you read those articles and the guy spent $10,000 on all his stuff and then he had to go rent a car and then he did this just so he could write an article, you got an old 97 Nissan Sentra and you were ready to put it in the graveyard anyway, that is a perfect candidate for you to go to the track and learn how to drive, right? Mm-hmm. To be a better driver, to be a safer driver, to learn some physics, right? Because that's the cool part about cars. It's history, it's physics, it's chemistry, it's engineering, it's all sorts of stuff all rolled into one. Now, it's not for everybody, but there is something for everyone. And that's why we want to make sure that we talk about and address all the different disciplines and get people excited about stuff. And as we've learned, and we'll probably talk about more, there's a lot of big overlap between the motorsport disciplines. And so for those of you out there, disciplines are things like rally and autocross and off-roading and track, right? All these different forms of motorsport, we call them disciplines. So there's some really cool stuff you can take away from all of them. And by getting involved in all of them, you actually become a more well-rounded, much like why you take so many different subjects in school, mm-hmm. You get involved in multiple disciplines of motorsport, you become a more well-rounded driver or pilot or rider or whatever your official title may be. So anyway, I'll pause there.
So I think this is a great, stopping point. Just say in conclusion, I mean, Grand Touring Motorsports is I guess, what's our mission statement? You got it pulled up?
Yeah. How many times have we been asked by the registers, what exactly is it that we do again?
It's on the website. They never use.
Yeah, that they never use. Just read the website. That's all you really need to know. But no, I think in the end, the idea here is, and actually, I blame Brett for having us rewrite this, and I'll just go ahead and pull it up and I'll read it to you guys, knowing that you'll never go to our website. So in summary, Grand Touring Motorsports is a non-traditional motorsports club started in 2014 as a social group of car enthusiasts. We've expanded into all sorts of motorsport and want to share our experiences with you. Our membership consists of a bunch of petrol heads who like to get together and have a great time. But years of racing, wrenching, and motorsports experience brings us together as a top-notch collection of knowledge, stories, and information. We serve several areas: the DMV, the Northeast, our southern states, and our mountain region. And our areas of interest revolve around high-performance drivers education, autocross, club racing, kart racing, drag racing, off-roading, car shows, or just about anything with a steering wheel and wheels. To learn more about our website or to learn more about us, visit our website, www.gtmotorsports.org, and become part of our team.
Yep. So there you have it. Episode 1 in the books.
In the books. You broke it. I fixed it. There we go.
Perfect.
All right. Until next time. Thanks, guys, for listening.
Later.